I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks everybody for being here. My name's Tucker. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm an educator here at Wenatchee River Institute. Quick show of hands, is this anybody's first time at a program at Wenatchee River Institute? All right, welcome. Yeah, we're working on incorporating a lot more feedback and trying to build our program. So part of all of our events, we're trying to figure out who's coming to our events and are we getting new people. So thank you for being here. Thanks to everybody for being here and making these events possible. So Wenatchee River Institute, our mission as a nonprofit is to connect people, communities, and the natural world. And we deliver on our mission through kind of two different branches of our education programs. One is our youth programs, which connects with schools locally here in Leavenworth, as well as all throughout the region in north central Washington. So we go as far as Brewster from here, and we hit Quincy and Chelan as well. Welcome, come on in, Sean. And then we have schools come to us as well for field trips here on our campus. And then we have summer camps and school break camps, and pretty much all year round we are interacting with youth and getting them outside, teaching them about the environment. So the other branches are community programs, which Red Barn events such as this is a big part of that. We have our community garden, we have seasonal nature walks. Just on Friday, we had one of our biggest events of the year, Trash and Show, which was awesome. So look for that next year in April. We also have Leavenworth Spring Bird Fest coming up next month in May, which is one of our other biggest events of the year. So that should be great. Another aspect of work here at WRI is connecting people to the place that we're on and the land that we're on. And part of all of our programs, we like to start by reading a land acknowledgement. So I'm going to take a moment to read our land acknowledgement for you all here. This land acknowledgement was created alongside the Shim-Pishquashu people. We are spreading the message they wish to be spread to the public. The land Wenatchee River Institute sits on is the ancestral homelands of the Shim-Pishquashu, Pisquosa, or Wenatchee people. The Shim-Pishquashu, meaning people in between, had villages positioned along the Wenatchee River and surrounding areas. Their ancestral homeland extends from the Cascade Ridge throughout what is now known as the Wenatchee and Okanagan valleys. The culture and economy of the Shim-Pishquashu people centers on taking care of the land. They fish, hunt, gather roots and berries, basket-making materials, and medicines. The Shim-Pishquashu are named within the Yakima Treaty of 1855. Language to establish the Wenatchee Reservation was never followed through, even with this needed surveying completed. Many Shim-Pishquashu now live on the Colville Reservation, 150 miles northeast of Leavenworth. They were forced off their land here, and the U.S. government moved them to this reservation. Many Shim-Pishquashu people are still alive today. They continue to practice their culture, harvest their traditional foods and medicines, and hold their ceremonies passed down from their ancestors. Most people won't see or notice them, but they continue to be on the land they're connected to. Their traditional language is Inhamchin, an interior Salish dialect, and I'd like to welcome you all by saying hello in their language. Tilhusht. We offer this land acknowledgement as the first step to amplifying Indigenous voices and recognizing the harm done to them as a people. We stand as an ally to recognize their connection to the land and their rights to practice their culture on these sacred lands. We encourage all to learn about the Indigenous peoples of the place you call home. Wenatchee River Institute is committed to sharing this land acknowledgement, following up with other actions to educate and be respectful. All right, so thanks everybody. Thank you for being here. And I have one more important thank you to give a shout out to all of our sponsors. These are the businesses that make Red Barn events like this possible. And we do multiple events each month throughout the year. So we really couldn't do it without the support of these businesses. So I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge these businesses as well. And if you find yourself out in town, please go support these businesses too, because they support our mission. So thank you to our Red Barn event sponsors, City of Leavenworth, North Central Washington Audubon Society, Sleeping Lady Mountain Resort, Ludwig's German Restaurant, Leavenworth Pine Village KOA, Icicle Brewing Company, Obertal Inn, South Restaurants, München House, Gustav's Hotel Pension Anna, Leavenworth Chamber of Commerce, Syndicate Smith, Rhine House, Blue Elk Inn, the Nature Conservancy, Wild Birds Unlimited, Leavenworth Coffee Roasters, Leavenworth Village Inn, Sage Mountain Natural Foods, Chocolat, Barron House, Cove Resort at Fish Lake, Tierra Learning Center, Riverfront Rock Gym, and Rimmer and Ryder Construction. So thank you to our sponsors for supporting this event and all of our other ones for the year. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening. So Matt Maxey, or Maxey, is the manager of the Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery, and they've been there for 5.5 years. And they're going to give us an overview of the hatchery, its purpose, annual operations, and understanding of the fisheries complex. We'll also learn about Icicle Work Group projects, the partial reuse aquaculture system, the surface water intake screening and pipeline project, tribal fisheries improvements, future projects, and more. So please welcome Maxey.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. I would like to say this is intended to be a very interactive presentation. So it's designed so that, you know, there's lots of pauses and areas for you to interrupt me, and I encourage you to interrupt me. I speak much better when I'm kind of, you know, interacting with people. So please, you know, participate in this and ask any questions, interrupt me at any point. Even if we jump ahead or jump back, please. So like I said, I'll be I'm a little mobile, so I'll be jumping around here as well. So please apologize for not sitting still. But overview of Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery. Why are we here? Icicle Work Group projects and some of the ones at the hatchery that we participated in, the partial reuse aquaculture system, or PRAS, SWISP, surface water intake, fish screening and passage, our intake replacement project. We're proud partner of the Cascade Orchard Irrigation Company's New Point of Diversion and Pipeline project. And we have a bunch of tribal fishing enhancement projects here at the hatchery that we're working with Icicle Work Group on, and then our own independent projects at the hatchery. So this last little bit, the salmon life cycle learning landscape, this one's an exciting one that I'm happy to kind of share the early stages on where we are on that. So Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery, why are we here? So, and where are we? Leavenworth, you're all here. I hope, has everybody been to the fish hatchery? Everybody in this room? You're all familiar with it, but we're 500 river miles up the Pacific Ocean. We're 7 major hydro dams up the Columbia. So you got the nice little, dams located on there. Has anybody been keeping track of the spring Chinook returns so far this year? So they're just starting to get going. Yesterday checked and we started getting 1,000 spring Chinook over Bonneville for the day. So they're starting to make their way up here. There's some great resources for those of you that aren't familiar with it. There's a Fish Passage Center. You can Google it, and you can look at those daily dam counts at all the dams along the major dams along the Columbia Basin. So like I said, yesterday's daily count was over 1,000. There's another one, if you, shoot, it just left me. We just call it DART, but if you Google DART fisheries, it should pop up. It's how we monitor pit tags, and you can track the fish from Columbia, or from Leavenworth all the way up to Columbia. I'll talk about that a little bit later too. Anyway, prime menu for questions. Prime menu for questions, that's all it is. So Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery, why are we here? So we're a mitigation hatchery for Grand Coulee Dam. So in 1938, the federal government commissioned 3 hatcheries to mitigate for the loss of habitat to Grand Coulee Dam, Leavenworth being one of them. The other 2 are part of our complex, Eniat National Fish Hatchery and Winthrop National Fish Hatchery. Part of the complex is also a Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office, the Mid-Columbia Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office. They do hatchery evaluation, habitat restoration, and native fish. So they also work within the complex. Leavenworth, we're a gravity flow system. We get 42 CFS off of Icicle Creek. It's a non-consumptive water right. So all that water passes through the fish, goes to our either pollution abatement ponds to get remove those fish wastes, and that water goes back into Icicle Creek. Currently, we have 29 raceways and 4 circular tanks, those PRAS tanks I was mentioning earlier, for our production of 1.2 million spring Chinook. So our annual production of spring Chinook, 1.2 million, and because, how many people are familiar with the life cycle of salmon? So most everybody. So salmon, specifically spring Chinook, they spend about 20 months or so in streams and rivers before they begin smolting and moving downriver. So this last week was actually our release of the fish. And prior to that, we had 2.4 because there's 2 age classes on station at any given time during certain parts of the year. So kind of, again, looking up Icicle Creek, the location of the hatchery, Icicle Road. And our intake's about a mile up. And how many? I'm going to get you to ask questions. I'm going to get you to interact with me. How many people saw our project last year? And we're, the last 2 years, really. So that was up at the intake, on our intake replacement. That was a large project, almost 20 years in the making.
You going to be talking more about that later?
I will, yeah. Just like I said, I'm priming you. So we also highlight Snow Creek up there. So if you don't know, we own about a little less than 1,000 acres up in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. We own most of the land around Nada Lake and Snow Lakes. And that reservoir is managed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So you'll see, if you hike up that way, you'll see a big rooster tail of water coming out over the talus slope. And that's us helping for habitat. So we actually, to mitigate or reduce our impact on Icicle Creek for that mile-long stretch, almost 2-mile stretch to our outfalls, where we remove that water from Icicle Creek. We use that water to supplement and add that back into Icicle Creek for habitat and native fishes. So we put about 60 CFS back into the creek.
How long has that been there?
It was there during the original construction, so it was installed around 1939.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this is my pause for questions about the hatchery. So we produce 1.2 million spring Chinook. Like I said, for our annual operations, the adults are coming back right now. So they'll really start hitting the hatchery around mid-May. The fishery will kind of kick off then. We'll start opening the ladder, collecting the adults, and holding them until they're ready to spawn in August. So mid-August and the first part of September is when we do our adult spawning. We'll remove the eggs from the females, the milk from the males, and mix it by hand and put them in incubators in our incubation building here. And they'll stay in there until mid-April. So they'll hatch in the trays. At that point, we'll call, we have sack fry. They'll continue to develop, use that sack, yolk sack up, and then once they're free swimming, juveniles, we have 122 troughs in this incubation building, and we tray them out into those troughs. And when they're that young, they get fed 7 times a day. And we walk to every one of those 122 troughs and feed them by hand. And those troughs get cleaned every morning. So,
If you weren't capturing them and they just came up naturally and they were going to nest in the gravel, would they still take 3 months from the time they got here until they were actually ready to lay their eggs? It takes that long.
It does. You know, those adults. It's just part of spring Chinook. So summer Chinook have a different life cycle. Fall Chinook have a different life cycle. Coho all different in how ready or how quickly they become ready or ready to spawn. And for spring Chinook here in Icicle Creek, it's about the 3 months to they're ready to spawn, and that's true with the native fish and the spring Chinook in Icicle Creek as well. So
current budget of the hatchery.
The complex budget, so for all 3 hatcheries and the conservation office that gets the same portion, it's a little under, actually we just got an increase last year, so a little over $8 million for the 3 hatcheries. We are reimbursable through the Grand Coulee Dam, so it's all ratepayer dollars from Grand Coulee. We're not appropriated dollars from Congress. Some of these projects, if you are interested, like the large projects we have, those are appropriated dollars from Congress through the Bureau of Reclamation because of the Grand Coulee connection. So continuing the life cycle and how we raise fish, those fish, once they hatch about February, or ponded in here in February, they stay in this building until the fish that we have outdoors are released. We clean those ponds, and those fish mid-April to beginning of May, depending on how the season's going, those fish that are inside this building will be moved outside to our outside raceways. And they'll remain out there all winter long until the next April, where we use our nice fish pump. We crowd them in as a fish safe pump. So we have fish crowders, and we'll start at the head end, crowd them down towards the fish pump, and pump them right into Icicle Creek. So all 1.2 million will be released right here. We actually encourage people to come out. So it's around the same time every year, right around when the dams are spilling, so around April 17th, give or take a couple days. And the reason I like to pitch this is because if we have people down here, you help us scare the predators away. So not as many will be eaten when they get down the river. I know the osprey are coming back. It's spring. I hadn't seen any in Icicle Creek till our first day of releases.
You're on the same schedule.
Yes. So yeah, once they get out, it takes them about a month to get out of the system. And our hatchery evaluation biologists will track them all the way out. They'll do kind of mortality assessments and see how they're doing. And 2 years typically out in the ocean before they come back.
What percentage do you pit take?
It depends on the year, but typical pit tags, I'll get to it later, but we're doing an evaluation study right now, so they're elevated compared to what we typically do, but right now about 30,000 pit tags. So why are we here? So we're making up for loss of habitat for spawning, and really it's because of the fish. And a big part of that is recreational and tribal fishery. So that's the intent, is that we have a sustainable fishery and that people have access to these fish and can harvest them here locally. Part of being a fishery too is the ocean fishery and ensuring that the commercial fishery is active, the downstream fishery is active, but a big part of it is here, the local fishery. So we work with all the harvest managers here on Icicle Creek. So we have the Yakima Nation, the Confederated Tribes of the Colville, and WDFW, the state. And we actually have meetings annually to talk about what the return looks like, to ensure the hatchery gets its required brood stock, and that we believe that there's enough fish in the system or coming back to the system that we can have one of these fisheries. So, right now, pre-season forecast for spring Chinook coming back to Icicle Creek is about 3,000 to 5,000 fish. So, highlighting the tribal fishermen down at the hatchery and their platforms. This is the area that's been designated as the primary tribal fishing area at Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery. So here's the spillway, hatchery canal and spillway with the fish ladder going up right here. So our tribal partners are all able to actually camp here at the hatchery during the fishing seasons. And most of the harvest occurs here right below the spillway. Part of the hatchery's operations and how we manage for fish is up here is what we call structure 5. And we have, it's off the map, but at the other end of the canal is what we call structure 2. And to enable us to collect the fish efficiently, we'll modify flows to send a majority of the water down this hatchery canal over the spillway and create a bubble curtain that will attract the fish and help them come up the fish ladder. But it also concentrates the fish down here so that they're able to be harvested by the tribes a little bit more efficiently as well.
Matt, is it both the Colville Reservation and the Yakima Reservation that can fish there?
It's the Wenatchee people, so it's those that are members of that band for both tribes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, Wenatchee people from both tribes.
Yeah.
Are they restricted to rod and reel?
No, they primarily fish rod and reel, but it's not their only limitation. And each tribe sets their own fishing guidelines. Yeah.
Who built the structures that they fish from?
They do.
They do?
Yep.
Okay.
Those are all built by the families that come fish. And they're kind of passed along to families. So usually, if I don't want to kind of overstep, but a lot of times, that is part of what they try to do, encourage their younger children to come out, teach them the customs and the fishing, and then they kind of like inherit the family kind of fishing area.
They kind of have a designated, this is my pier, so to speak, or the family pier, or whatever. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
and as they get washed out, it's kind of like free space. So yeah, there's very much a family connection there. It's really nice to kind of be a part of and see. And then here we have the regular boat launch and all of the area downstream from the boundary is right about here. And this is all public fishing access through here. So this is the primary public fishing access.
Because the Google Map labels that the Wenatchee River instead of...
I know, it's terrible. I curse every time. And then the hatchery does a lot of other work other than just raising fish. We have a lot of programs. We have a lot of partners that we help and assist with that they also help us. But I wanted to highlight a few. And obviously I didn't get everybody, and I want to get as, just really acknowledge those that I didn't grab. But the Bureau of Reclamation, they are our funding agency. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does not fund our hatchery because it is a mitigation hatchery for Grand Coulee Dam. All of our funding comes from the Bureau of Reclamation, and all of our major projects are managed by the Bureau of Reclamation. If you haven't seen the Wenatchee River and Eniat River beaver relocation project, their halfway house, if you want to call it that, is at Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery. So any nuisance beavers for this program that are trapped come to the hatchery. They try to capture the whole family group because they do a much better job at relocating them as a family group. And once they kind of get them acclimated, get the whole family group, they relocate them out in the forest. So we get to be a part of that. Yakima Nation Fisheries, we have a nice agreement with them. They share our space. They have a coho reintroduction program and produce about 500,000 fish that they release on site at the fish hatchery. For total production, they have about 1.2 million fish as well, but they have several sites further up the Wenatchee that they use. Only about 500,000 of them are released at the fish hatchery on Icicle.
The coho they release come back here.
Oh yeah, they actually have, the last 5 years have been phenomenal coho returns. Not a lot of fishing pressure on them. Typically, coho is not as desirable. They have a much shorter window from the time they return to the time they're ready to spawn. So the quality of the meat, if you will, is a little less than that of the spring Chinook. But still really good returns, and if you get them early, they're still really good. Cascade School District, we have their Discovery School at the hatchery located there, and gives the students a lot of opportunity to use the hatchery space for a learning environment. This is kind of the website logo for the Icicle work group. And this one, we do a lot of work within the Icicle strategy of the Icicle work group. So this is, if you do iciclestrategy.com is their new website. They have a lot of great videos showing the work that's going on with the project. Master gardeners, we have a heritage garden, native garden at the hatchery. They continue to work on every year. Make improvements, and do what they can for native species. NOAA Fisheries, they're working with us on the partial reuse aquaculture system, PRAS system, and they're helping us look at the fish physiology for the fish that are being reared in our new system. And then if you haven't been to Salmon Fest, Friends of Northwest Hatcheries is located, their headquarters is at the hatchery. The Salmon Fest is no longer at the hatchery because of some of the projects we have going on, but still really a good partner for us. Again, we have lots and lots of other partners, but these are some of the ones that I really wanted to highlight and show like some of the things we're involved in at the hatchery. So Icicle Work Group, is everybody in the room familiar with the Icicle Work Group and the Icicle strategy? So this is, see a head shaking no. Icicle Work Group is, it's a multi-agency entity work group co-convened by Chelan County and Department of Ecology, Washington Department of Ecology. So they formed this group to help all the entities interested in Icicle Creek come together to manage the water in a way that's beneficial for the community, the environment, and the residents of Leavenworth and those that are impacted by Icicle Creek. That's as quick as I am willing to go into it. It's a lot more, if you want to read the small print, this is the county's website to talk about their involvement and how they're one of the founding members of the Icicle work group. But Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery's involvement in this work group is just so let me step back. One of their guiding principles is a sustainable hatchery. So all of the projects we do that enhance the fish hatchery or the tribal fishery relate to the Icicle work group. So we're heavily involved in what they do and do what we can to be supportive of the other organizations that are working to make Icicle a better and more sustainable river. Increasing the flows, increasing habitat availability for native species or protected species and those types of things. So some of those hatchery projects that are tied to the Icicle work group, the first one, large project that we had that was tied to the Icicle work group was our partial reuse aquaculture system. So why did we go that way? All the traditional raceways at the fish hatchery were working fine. Why are we going to go to invest millions of dollars in a new system that hasn't really been proven works for spring Chinook? Well, we have groundwater limitations at the fish hatchery. We have surface water that regularly gets above 70 degrees. and it's full of fish pathogens. So, you know, we have biological opinions that hold the hatchery to standards or limitations or restrictions on how we impact the environment and ESA listed species. So we were on a non-compliant fish screen for almost 80 years. And we have our discharge permit with the EPA that has restricted phosphorus limitations. And PRAS is a way to capture that phosphorus and prevent it from going out to the river. So, and finally, we do have aging and failing infrastructure, so we need to get it replaced. So this is one of the tanks. There's 4 of them in this building. If you have been at the hatchery, you see that brand new big building. It's got 4 tanks. They're each 26 feet in diameter and 7 feet deep. We can hold up to 70,000 fish in each of them, and the system's intended to hold about 280,000 fish. These are some of the metrics we're using to evaluate how the system works, so the flows and the size of the fish. So we're using that as a guide on how effective it is at creating or building a healthy smolt. So this is the mechanical side of the building, and we have some of the recirculating pumps, big UV system here. We have a series of blowers that are CO2 strippers for the recirculating water. So very complicated. This is a giant aquarium if you keep fish at your house. So we have, our goal is about a 75% reuse. It can use groundwater and surface water. Like I said, it has UV treatment. You can't see it, but there's a black box right here, and that's a drum filter. And it does a really good job at removing those fish waste, like I said, for that phosphorus limitation. Really good job of removing the solid fish waste so that it doesn't stay in the water system, because a big part of phosphorus getting into the river is the duration that fish waste has in water. So it becomes aqueous and stays in the system. So if we can remove that solid and prevent it from staying in the water that's being recirculated or going out to the river, we're preventing it from going to the Icicle Creek. So we're currently, year 2 was just completed of a 5-year evaluation study comparing the new PRAS to our traditional raceways. And we're looking at, like I said, juvenile health, survival, physiology with NOAA fisheries, but we're also looking at water quality, and we don't have the data yet because we're only 2 years in, but we're going to be looking at adult returns as well. So I know we had questions coming up about our intake project, so I'm excited for them. So our old intake, this was, here's the Lowhead Dam. This is a sluiceway that was converted into a fish ladder, and our intake building. I wish I could remember the year. This dam was Cascade Orchard's original dam when they first started. So in the late 1800s, I think, is when their water right was from. And the Bureau of Reclamation came in and added to it. So we have a partnership with Cascade Orchard Irrigation. We currently still have a shared intake with them. So their water, if you're a member, is still coming down our pipeline. But when Bureau came in 1938, 1939 for construction, they built these structures, and just, I really wish you could see it. There's about a 6-inch grizzly rack right here, and inside it was a 2-inch grizzly rack. And so a big steel structures that only really kept large logs out. Everything else was still came down to the hatchery. During winter, we get icing events regularly, and when we have a nice big cold snap, we would get ice that would form on these structures, and we'd have to send staff up there to chip the ice off or melt the ice off. So it was a big safety concern. Unscreened, unsafe, and this fish ladder, like I said, was originally constructed as a sluiceway, so only operated as a fish ladder under optimal conditions. So didn't allow great fish passage at this intake. So you can actually see this is low flow. This is summer when before spawning after the spring Chinook return, and these Chinook would spawn all through here. And one thing, if you're raising fish, you don't want adults spawning in the water that's going down to your juvenile fish, because they will die, and all the pathogens that they're carrying are going to be brought down to your fish. So we really wanted to prevent that from happening. We had our construction. So this was year 1 of construction. No, year 2 actually, yeah. So this was the beginning of year 2. So this is currently the head gate that they constructed. All of the old channel is filled in, and this is them constructing the new fishway, the new constructed low flow channel. So this is what it looks like now. So the big components to this, the major components, was a screened intake preventing fish, primarily endangered species and native species, from entering our pipeline and being entrained in the fish hatchery system. And then this low flow channel, allowing for fish passage for more species at a wider range of flows in Icicle Creek. So this is the low flow channel at flows under, I think, 200 CFS. This will allow for fish passage. Anything over 300 to 1,000, we'll start using these side channels, and it'll still, because of the placement of the boulders, there's enough that fish can still make it up here.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm not being hostile.
No?
But I drove past this, I live right above this project and drove past it every day for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And I was quite concerned about what was going on and the amount of alteration to the natural channel that went on. It seems to me, and I guess I understand now that you intentionally narrowed the river to make a low flow passage, but I mean, about a third of the north side of the river was removed by your concrete structure. And then on the south side, on the left of this picture, you built a boulder field and then pumped it full of concrete, essentially creating a dam on that side of the river. So now all the water in lower flow is channeled through the central third of the old river. And the other portion there's flow only at high water. Obviously, yeah. You're saying that was the intent.
So yeah, the designers built this so that it was more like the upstream and downstream sections of Icicle Creek. I'm hoping what you're talking about is this.
They put all the boulders and then pump concrete in to essentially create a dam.
They actually didn't put concrete in here. This is the existing sluiceway, so they just didn't remove the entire sluiceway.
I saw a pump truck.
And the pump truck, this is all right here, that low flow channel. That's where all the concrete went. So all these boulders are grouted in place. So this will not shift, yeah. So that these boulders were designed for spacing, and the actual head height on these is so that the fish can make it up. So they don't want these to shift so that the pool depth and the pool height don't change. And I do know your concerns. Fish and Wildlife Service, our staff were involved in the designs and very much spoke out to ensuring that the passage and the river corridor remained as natural as we could with you know, with the limitations of the designers.
The equipment that's up on the concrete portion, is that pumping equipment?
Nope,
or
that's a long arm excavator. So that was,
Temporary.
yeah, that's not there anymore. And that was just the last piece of equipment that was, you know, doing the final boulder placements. So this was before they actually, and getting ahead of myself, this was taken right before they cleaned up for the season.
Did you say those boulders are grouted?
Just the ones in the low flow channel. Yeah.
So it's a permanent arrangement to accommodate.
For the low flow channel, yeah.
It's sort of like a natural fish ladder you created in the middle with steps.
Yep, exactly. And I'm, you know, very appreciative of the you know, critique, and I'm not taking it personal, so it's, I'm okay with it, and keep them coming. Because this was a huge, so I know, like, we got calls every day about this project for 2 years, essentially, because of the impact it had on neighbors. And you know, we would take that to the Bureau and be like, hey, you need to help us with outreach. You need to help us with explaining what this project's for. We have a staff of 12 people at the hatchery. We all have to raise fish. We need support. And what I want to, you know, highlight, and why I'm, you know, really here and to talk about these projects is to show the benefit of what they actually are. Yeah, I mean, we didn't like it either for 2 years. It was interrupting our water flow for the hatchery. Yeah, go ahead.
I found it curious that there was nothing posted out there at the site.
At the site?
Yeah, I mean, in any other, of course, like, this is not downtown Seattle, and you're not building a high-rise building, but that could have really helped cut down on your phone call processing and just dealing with people, because people were, you know, if you have knowledge, you have more power to understand what's happening, and none of that was flowing, so to speak.
No, I'll take that.
Fault.
No, I will take that back with me.
Just, I think that could have helped the community quite a bit.
But the big part on this, and again, why it's a highlight, is this intake replacement has been on the hatchery's design and project list for over 20 years. And every year it was terminated at some point because of, you know, funding or community outreach failed, or you know, litigations or things like that. So this is a major accomplishment because we are on a screened intake. It's protecting species, endangered species, from getting it in our intake and being entrained in the fish you know, pipeline to the fish hatchery. And it allows for better passage for you know, more species and across longer range of flows.
Did they have to replace the pipeline all the way to the hatchery from the project?
That's not yet. So that's still on the to-do list.
There was one time I stopped and talked to some of the folks working there was a big boulder, really big boulder, that was that part of this? Because I remember they were describing it as being a pretty big barrier for fish, and then they removed it, so I just wasn't sure.
The boulder field bypass.
Yeah, the boulder field, and that was further upstream, up by the Snow Creek trailhead.
And that was part of all this?
That was part of the Icicle Work Group project,
Okay.
but it was a Trout Unlimited funded project.
That's right.
So before they even completed the intake, as they opened up the low flow channel, this was the first week, and we had, just opened up the coffer dam to get water in here. This was day 2, I think, and we already had spring Chinook going past it. So it works.
There were 100 or so spring Chinook in the big pool beneath the boulder field.
Scott, I think the first person to spot him, and he kind of spread the word.
Yeah.
So even though all that construction was going on, all that fish, a lot of fish,
They were making it through.
by adults that were up there trying to spawn. Yeah.
We're really hopeful that the state fixes the antenna, the pit tag antenna above the boulder field, so we can see if the steelhead are getting.
Not working right yet.
No, it's not. But we're really interested in that too.
There was very little water coming through at the boulder field. That was all just so kind of river was really low, but the fish had gotten that far.
Yeah.
The adults.
I know the coho were making it up there too. So other icicle work group projects that we're partnered with, not necessarily for the hatchery, but working with the hatchery. So Cascade Orchard Irrigation Company has their project that's kicking off this spring. So it's already occurring. They have the shared intake with us, so we're doing what we can as good partners, and we're providing the staging areas for the contractor. So these 2 areas are where the pipe will be stored, and the contractor use area for their equipment will be down here at the hatchery property.
That little island supposed to be a fish.
It is, yeah. My maintenance staff really felt that they could have some fun in equipment and make a fish island. One of the ones I'm really happy to see moving forward with the Icicle Work Group, we're doing some tribal enhancement projects. So this fall, we'll be installing a waterless toilet here for the tribal fishery. They're also going to be moving forward with stream bank stabilization for one of the fishing sites. So if you've been walking at the hatchery, you can see this bank is really getting eroded from people going down here. So do some improvements here. And then the thing that they just completed is this structure 5 right here. Like I said, we manage this for the fishery when the adults are coming back. And we have some pickets that we put in here to prevent our fish from impacting native and endangered species further up. And those pickets are used to be extremely dangerous. Our staff would have to go underneath the bridge and lower boards that were 10 feet long and weighed about 250 to 350 pounds into place. So we just had, the Icicle Work Group funded a fabricator in Kashmir to create the pickets for us to put in single piece. So our staff doesn't have to, lower them by hand and get them into place. So really helpful for us and the tribal fishery. And then for us, what are we looking at in the future? There's lots of projects that we want to get accomplished, but these are just the highlights. So here's the new partial reuse aquaculture system facility. Moving that into full production, where all of our fish will be in, those buildings. So this was designed to be modular, so that if the pilot goes well, we can build the next section and then continue building over the old Foster Lucas ponds here at the hatchery. So we would have 3 buildings here with our production in them. Our adult holding facility is 1966 design and 68 construction, I believe. And right now, how we manage fish is not how they intended to manage fish when they built them. So we have a lot more partnerships with the tribes on providing excess fish for tribal ceremonial and subsistence needs. And the way we have this configured now, there's only a fish lift on one side. These ponds are built in in a common head and a common tail. So if we're working in one, the water level is affected in both. So when we do a excessing event and those fish are being surplused for the tribes, it affects our brood, and that can get our fish sick and cause early mortality, so we don't get an opportunity to spawn them. So make improvements here so we can be more humane and more efficient in how we collect adults.
Point out where the circular tanks are on that picture.
Yeah, so this building right here. So here's the main hatchery building, and then our covered 10 by 100 raceways, and so just to the north. This one's a very exciting one. This design's about 10 years old. We're working with Cascade Fisheries on this, but a portion of the property was planning to be what they called a salmon life cycle learning landscape. And what they want to do is capture the Columbia Basin and in a trail system that talks about the whole ecosystem of the basin and the importance of salmon and to the community, the ecosystem, and society, multiple societies, the currently and those are the tribes in memoriam. So this was resurrected about 2 years ago, and we are currently in design phase for a new location, and we are in talks with Cascade Fisheries and the designers to put this in the north end of the property so that this can be an educational landscape for the community and for partners like Wenatchee River Institute and others, so that they have a place to go here locally and learn about the ecosystem of the Columbia Basin and the life cycle of salmon. So more to follow, more to come.
Does Jason have money for that project?
He's getting money, yeah.
Not for the design, for the...
So the design's funded, and he's yeah. We're really excited for that. Yeah. And that's it for what I had intended. Like I said, this was really meant to be more driven by you guys, so I'm here for questions for as long as you want. Yeah?
I noticed not much was mentioned about steelhead. I know they're in tough shape, but what is the situation?
So as a Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery, we don't have any production for steelhead. We do a lot of monitoring to ensure that we don't impact the steelhead, but that's about as much as the fish hatchery does. We do have, a lot of entities we work with that are, whether they're doing research or monitoring or whatever, that we have ties to, but the hatchery, I don't have enough that I could say anything of substance on the steelhead.
Are the scientists at the resource office, do they do anything with steelhead at all? Or
it's mostly NOAA because of being the nature of steelhead. So most of the work that the conservation office does is with bull trout. They do have some overlap because we do have steelhead programs. Winthrop National Fish Hatchery is a steelhead facility as well. So they do spring chinook, coho, and steelhead. So we do a lot. Like I said, we have a lot of other agencies we do work with, and that ties to the steelhead. But Leavenworth itself, we don't have those connections. Mm-hmm.
This question's for you and maybe Mike. So the Boulder Field Bypass project took place about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the idea was, my understanding, was that the boulder was a physical barrier for the upper 16 miles of the icicle, which had potential to be good spawning for fish if it wasn't too warm. Mm-hmm. But I've heard zero feedback since the construction from anybody, including Trout Unlimited, as to whether it was successful Are fish going up the bypass around the boulder?
Fish are getting up. We don't know. I'm also a spectator, so I don't have the information to give you really good, feel like I'm giving you the correct information. But as a fellow spectator, the big part is we know fish are getting up. We know that it's working to some extent. We just don't know to what extent. The thing that's kind of preventing us from doing more and being better informed is, so WDFW owns and operates 3 pit antennas along Icicle Creek. We have the lower array by the confluence of the Wenatchee. We have the middle array that's just upstream of the fish hatchery above structure 2, and then the upper array, which is above the boulder field. Unfortunately, the age of those antennas, they're all of the same model, and they're no longer supported with the equipment that they use to run them. So one of them died. I don't remember which one, if it was the lower or the middle, and WDFW pretty much took the guts of the upper array to supplement and get the other 2 working. The problem is it was the same timing as the completion of the Boulder Field project. So I think they had 1 summer of data before that system went offline. So now we have two summers without information on whether or not pit tagged fish or steelhead specifically are getting above the Boulder Field. So WDFW, this is another one of the things that gets brought up often in the Icicle work group, is the status of that. And WDFW is working to actively get that upper antenna back online so that we can hopefully have data for this summer and have, especially for the steelhead, whether or not they're actively using it as a corridor. Yes.
So this is a little bit of a different question, but, and I don't know if all this activity, is it focused on fish going upstream, would be question number 1. But with the downstream activities on the Icicle that we know are coming soon, with all the rafting and the activity on the water from people, I've heard talk about, trying to curtail, put some limits in place. How destructive is that to operations that, all this other investment is going toward?
Yeah.
Or is it not? Or is it just a nuisance? Or is it really, is it an environmental? Can you speak to that at all?
I can speak to it a little bit. I'm not the, again, the expert in this, but there is concern, but it's not, a critical concern. It's, I think the biggest concern is the number and the impact on the habitat. The data we have on the native species for that reach, most of them are not going to be impacted by the tubing. It's likely the corridor that's going to be impacted. The trash, everything. Yeah, exactly. But a lot of the early spawners before the tubing season, they're either their fry are already emerging, or they haven't spawned yet, so that their eggs aren't deposited in the river system. That's a majority of them. So it's less of an impact than we might think, but there's still a need to be conservation minded, right? So there's also not a lot of active spawning occurring in many of those places. A lot of it is further upstream, like in the hatchery, the historic channel at the hatchery, or those sections. So there is other use outside of the main areas that are being impacted by the tubers. We do operate our boat launch area. We operate it in such a manner that the gates are open during the fishing season, and when the fishing season's done, we close the gates. Unfortunately, for the mindset of the conservation aspect, the fishing season for the tribes goes through the month of July. So we maintain that access so the tribes can have access to the fishery. So what we do for management is let people know when flows become such that they should not be tubing or they should consider going elsewhere, because that's a lot of times when they are walking and they will have an impact on those redds, where those fish are spawning. So, we will put out signs like flows are below 100 CFS. It'll take you 3 hours to get to the Wenatchee. You'll do a lot of walking and just try to be educating in that manner so that people do have, awareness that they're going to have more of an impact on the system. But the hatchery is not the only place that people are accessing. We were probably the biggest, I will acknowledge that, with our parking area and our boat launch. But if we close those gates, we see it all the time. They just move. Yes?
Aside from the work that y'all do at the hatchery, do you like snap your fingers and have other means to increase the fish populations? What are some things that you would prescribe or do or magically make reality?
So, as conservationist and a biologist, I mean, I don't think there's a solution that's like snap your fingers, it's done. Because we still have to deal with people, we still have to deal with the dams, and the impact we've had over the last 200 years in America. But I think what we're doing here, this community kind of aspect of it, is really critical. I mean, I have a young child, and we talk about it all the time about doing what we can to make those little steps in conserving what we can for future generations. And I mean, she gets angry every time she sees somebody litter on the ground, and we do what we can to pick it up. So, doing small conservation projects, doing habitat improvements, doing, I think a lot of ways getting, involved in a community and doing those to realize the importance of nature and the importance of the connectedness that we have to nature. And just kind of instilling that into our future generations is kind of like the key part of that, because it's not going to get fixed. We know restoration projects and habitat improvement are not going to bring native species back from where they are now. We do habitat restoration projects all the time, and the habitat's there, but the fish can't get to it or utilize it enough to get the populations up where we want them. And I don't think we're going to be able to do that while we're still operating the dams. And unfortunately, we need the dams.
Yeah. So you think that's the main?
I mean, that in my rose glasses that I see is the dams have the biggest impact. And if we remove them today, it's not going to fix the problems. So it's a bigger problem than just the dams. But we have altered the Columbia Basin beyond recognition. It's not the mighty Columbia free-flowing that is unlimited, salmon from here to, that you could walk across the backs of salmon. The reality is that's not here anymore. Removing the dams would be great, but it's not a guarantee that the spawning habitat's going to be suitable. That maybe in 100 years after the dams are removed, we're going to see a natural system that's functioning appropriately. But we as humans, are we honestly going to allow a timeline like that to occur? I mean, if it's not in our generation or our life's time, typically we don't approve projects. So not to answer your question, there's my answer.
So, one final question for me.
Oh, thank you for coming.
So you get you spawn about 100 1,200,000 fish you release, and 3,000 to 5,000 come back in a good year now. And so the return rate is relatively small.
Yes.
So I've heard that there's approximately 10% loss per dam. I don't know if that's true or not, but then where are the rest of them? Is it natural predation? Are they being caught in the ocean by commercial fishing people? Where are the rest of them?
Yeah, yes and yes and yes. So it's about, we lose about 50% of the fish all the way to Bonneville. So half the fish are gone by the time they reach Bonneville Dam. And then you have the unlimited variables of the ocean. So every year we look at the ocean conditions, and NOAA does a really good job of what they call like a stoplight chart on ocean conditions. And we look at it all, and I want to say it's like 20 variables that they kind of monitor. And it's red, yellow, green, and they look at it, every year. So you can look the last 20 years on those ocean conditions. And there's a direct correlation between fish returns and ocean conditions. So when you have greens, you have really good returns. When you have yellows, they're okay. When you have red, you have poor returns. And it's never just straight green, yellow, red. It's always a mix. So it's always kind of like what's good, what's not. And the last 8 years have been mostly yellows and reds. We're in a little bit of the last 3 years have been lots of yellows and greens. So if you've been paying attention to the return, we had almost 3 years where we had 10,000 fish return back to Icicle Creek. This year is a lot of yellows again, and we're looking at a lower return, 3,000 to 5,000 fish. All of the hatchery production does contribute to the commercial fishery out in the ocean. So a portion does. Most of the commercial fisheries do report pit tags that they capture or coated wire tags that they do. So we do have some understanding of the number of fish that are going to the commercial fishery. It's a little harder to say what's going to the recreational fishery in the Columbia. So like I said, there's a portion of our fish that get, just by the nature of the Columbia Basin, they're getting captured as part of the recreational fishery in the lower fishery, down in the Columbia River Gorge or other areas. Most anglers aren't reporting on what the pit tag said or the coated wire tag in their fish. They're just bringing it home and doing what they will with it. So we have it's all anecdotal, but Leavenworth stock, our fish, typically come earlier in the spring Chinook run. That's typically when the downstream fisheries occur, is earlier in the run. So we have some belief that the Leavenworth stock does disproportionately get harvested in the lower river. There's no evidence to show that, but we have pit tag data to show when it's going over Bonneville. We know it's earlier part of the run, and we typically see a lot less pit tags as they come up the system. So. Don't know. We know they're not straying. The thought is it's going to the recreational fishery. So, biggest contributor to the returns is the ocean conditions. Climate change is not helping with ocean conditions.
Is there ever...
Yeah, take them all. We'll start. You had one or one?
Is there ever any talk of increasing production or adding more hatcheries? Or that's not really a solution to the natural problem, but
yeah, there's a lot of talk, but there's also concerns. You don't want to increase artificial or hatchery production to the detriment of the native species. All of the hatchery production in the main stem Columbia is managed through the US v. Oregon agreements or accords. So our production levels are set by those accords. So it's
a finite amount
that's what we produce, and we have a plus or minus 10% within that. Any changes would have to go to the parties that manage those accords, and they would alter the production levels.
Some of those years, like the yellow, there's no mitigating that.
Nope.
Production changes.
We're all set by the U.S. v. Oregon agreements. So it's fisheries in the Northwest is very complicated. So as soon as you start going to those upper management levels, there's a lot of parties that are involved. So it becomes a much larger conversation on how those numbers would increase.
Sure. I was just going to ask if you know about the dam up in Tumwater Canyon.
I know about it, yes.
What's the story on what that is?
States talking about it. That's all I can say. It's just, it is managed by the state, WDFW. They use it a lot for the PUD programs for their mitigation for their dams. So there's a lot of benefit to operating it by the state. So there's a lot of consideration on keeping it versus removing it. And that's as much as I can say.
My question is, I know that spring Chinook salmon on the Wenatchee River are listed in the Endangered Species Act. Mm-hmm. So is there any science that talks about the operation of the hatchery out here and the impact? Or is there an impact at all on the spring Chinook that are listed on the Wenatchee River?
Yeah, so our biological opinions that relate to those endangered species very much have restrictions on the hatchery on how we operate so that we don't impact them. So tying it back, actually, this was a good order. I'm glad you did it. The Tumwater Dam is one of those ways the state manages fish to monitor Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery's production. So we have a limitation on the number of pit-tagged fish that are allowed up the Wenatchee. So if we have more than 2 pit-tagged fish go up there, we're in violation of our biological opinion.
So there are fish that stray from the hatchery?
Typically we don't violate. So usually a handful of fish will go up there, but very low numbers. We actually, for hatchery production programs, we have very low straying rates. So we're pretty proud of the fact that our fish are really good at coming back to the hatchery. So we get some that go up the Eniat, we get some that do go up further in the Wenatchee, but both systems very low occurrences before we start violating our biological opinions. But very complicated on what's going on with the management of fish in the upper Wenatchee. It's fascinating if you like that kind of stuff, but a lot of the PUDs in the state are very active on, the Chihuahua and the Nason Creek programs on managing for those. So I don't know how much literature is available for those, but yeah, there's a lot of management in trying to maintain those populations. Anything online? Nope. All right, perfect. Well, last shameless plug, for the Friends of the Northwest Hatcheries is the Salmon Fest. So they're having Salmon Fest again this year at the Rocky Reach Dam. So if you have family, little ones, friends that are not from the area and want to take them to Salmon Fest this year, highly encourage you to do so. I was supposed to bring flyers. They're at my house where I left them. But if you are interested, let me know and I can find a way to get them to you.
We'll put them in the WRIE news, which you can sign up for at the welcome table.
There we go. I do really like these community events. I really like having questions about the hatchery. It means people care. You know, if you're angry about the construction project, I can sympathize with you, but I hope I can find a way to also make you happy that it happened. So thank you for being, you know, my neighbors, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Maxie. Thank you all again for being here, for coming out tonight. I also forgot to give a shout out thank you to Mason for selling drinks, our outreach coordinator, and thank you to Jeremy, our volunteer running the technology tonight. Let's give another hand to Maxie. Thank you.